Welcome back, everyone. So part 3 today of our part 6 Ascension analysis series is going over water. So that means Jillian and Jamail get new toys, even though Jamail didn't need them. So starting off with the commons, we have Father's Betrayal. It's a 1-cost instacast spell that reads return exhausted unit you control to its owner's hand. I'm not a huge fan of this card. We have other cards that do kind of what this card does, but better. You have Guiding Winds, which is this card, but does it better, and it doesn't need to be exhausted. And then Ancient Serpent's Breath within blue already, which is a better 1-cost spell to play. So I think this card's pretty worthless. Next up, we've got Jillian's Gambit. It's a 3-cost spell that reads, as an additional cost to play this card, flip your champion face down. If your champion is Jillian, the Witch Queen, look at the top 5 cards of your deck and put them back in any order. Reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a water unit, put it into play. Otherwise, send it to the discard zone, and your opponent may destroy one of your towers. So this card got a lot of people hyped when it was originally released. The big thought was you could bring out Crystal Dimensional Dragon for a cost of 3. But if you read Crystal Dimensional Dragon, it says that it needs to be in your hand for the arrive ability to actually activate, so that is not a legal target. But blue does have good targets that cost high amounts that can be cheated out with Jillian at the cost of flipping your champion face down. This is best to play with Jillian as your champion, obviously, because you get to look at the top 5 cards of your deck, but it does still have some merits in Jamail, because Jamail runs cards like Mr. Kins and Azure Seer. You also have Cryptic Crystal if you run a mono blue strategy. So you have ways to know what's on the top of your deck before you play this card. Your top targets are things like Juggernaut, Mayu, Leviathan, all of those things. So this is an interesting card. I can see some pretty nutty decks based around this card. So this one's going to be interesting. I kind of like this one. Moving on, we have Guardsmen of Leviathan. It's a 4-cost unit with 2,000 power. It is a knight unit, so this has some playability with white as they revolve around knights. It is a guardian unit as well, and it has an arrive ability that says flip one of your towers face down or flip one of your towers face up. So the gimmick for blue in this set revolves around face-up towers. They have cards that we'll see here in a little bit that revolve around flipping face-up towers face down. And one thing to note there is you cannot flip a destroyed tower face down. You can only interact with destroyed towers if the card specifically says so. But this one, let's say you had a destroyed fire tower face up, you would not be able to flip that face down. So any tower that is face up that is not destroyed, you can flip face down with this. But like I said, the Leviathans in this set kind of revolve around having your towers face up, and then they get some kind of effect based on how many towers you have face up. But I think this card's terrible. Now we're looking at Witch Queen's Ring. It's a 1-cost gear, which is interesting. It's the first non-white, non-argent gear that we get. So kind of insinuating maybe splashing in blue with Liam. Which is nice because we have Tux. We've seen some Liam Tux decks do well already. So this can go into a Liam Tux deck for an additional gear. But it says equip to target unit. Whenever the equipped unit attacks, draw a card, then discard a card. So it's kind of got like a pseudo Tux effect to thin out your deck even more. Very interesting. White tends to like having multiple gears in their discard zone to utilize Koran War Room or get out Iskandar for cheaper. So maybe you can splash this into your Liam Tux deck now. I think this card's pretty good. And you can search it off of the new White Spirit as well. So also something to note. So next up we got Oracle of Leviathan. It's a 3-cost unit with 1,500 power. And it says this card cannot be targeted by spells while you have 2 or more face-up towers. And then it has a ruined ability that says you may flip 2 of your towers face down. So I don't like this card either. I'm not a huge fan of this Leviathan gimmick stuff with the towers face up and face down. Not being able to be targeted whenever you have 2 or more face up towers is kind of nice. But at the same time, the ruin ability, in my opinion, has no merit to it. So I don't know. Yeah, not liking this card either. So moving on now, we got Assault from the Deep. It's a 2-cost spell that says put into play a water unit from your hand with cost X or less. Then if you have 4 or more face-up towers, you may return a unit to its owner's hand with cost X or less, where X equals the number of your face-up towers. So depending on the amount of face-up towers you have, this can allow for like a 5-cost water unit to cost only 2, and then you could possibly return a unit to your opponent's hand. I do not like this card either. All of these cards just seem worthless, and all of the blue spells that we currently have seem much better than this. So now we're going to look at Endowment of the Sea God. It's a 1-cost spell that reads you can only play 1 Endowment of the Sea God each turn. Flip any number of your face-up towers face down. If you do, the next card you play this turn costs X less to play, where X equals the number of towers you flip face down. So more face-up to face-down shenanigans. This one allows you to cheat out monsters again. Again, not liking the face-up, face-down mechanic. Just not liking it. I don't think this card's worth it. So our last common card is Leviathan's Fury. It's a 10-cost instacast spell that reads, this card costs 1 less to play for each of your face-up towers. Return all units your opponent controls to their owner's hand. So this card's interesting. It can cost 5 at the minimum, and returning units to your opponent's hand is nice. It doesn't target, so that's good. It is competing with cards like Chronostasis and Shards of Winter. I do think this card might find its way into a deck. I don't know. I think there's just better options. I think Chronostasis does it better. I also think Shards of Winter does it better, so I don't know. I think this card is also pretty doo-doo. So moving on to the rares now, we have Hanna, Reformed Apprentice. It's a 5-cost unit with 2,500 power. She has an arrive ability that says put into play a water elemental token with Ruined. Return target unit to its owner's hand. It's an okay card, but the effect is rather lackluster for a 5-cost unit. I guess if you wanted to use the Dark Spirit, the new Dark Spirit, to sacrifice the token for some kind of disruption, that's one option. But I think this is a lackluster option, and you probably shouldn't run it. Moving on to Cosmic Water Magic. It's a 2-cost spell with instacast, and it says this card costs 1 less to play for each face-up water tower. Target unit you control cannot be targeted by your opponent's spells this turn. Interesting cosmic magic. Not being able to be targeted is always nice. The fact that it can be free is also cool, but it's situational like the other cosmics, so I don't know if you'd play this. I don't know if it warrants a spot. So our last rare is Mayu's Magic Mirror. It's a 4-cost spell that reads exhaust target unit you control, and if you do, search your deck for a unit with the same name and put it into play. So this effect's pretty strong. Off the top of my head, I don't have a whole lot of cards that I would want to bring out off of this. Obviously, Eccentric Visitor is always one that I like to have, because whenever you play this and you bring something from your deck immediately to the field, you're going to get that arrive ability, so that's nice. Any kind of monster that has a static ability as well, that you can just activate on the field is nice. Maybe a Hanna Conjurer Supreme would be a nice target to get multiple out to do some shenanigans. So our last rare is Mayu's Magic Mirror. It's a 4-cost spell that reads exhaust target unit you control, and if you do, search your deck for a unit with the same name and put it into play. So this is a pretty powerful effect. 4 cost is not cheap, but the effect is strong, so I think it's warranted. Just some quick cards that come to mind are definitely Eccentric Visitor. That's always a nice card to pull directly from the deck. Flip back over any of your spirits, whether it be a Tux that you've already soul bursted for its stun ability or whatnot. Any kind of unit that has an exhaust ability that you can use on your opponent's turn. I'm sure there's tons of targets for this, and I think this card's only going to get better. So I think this one's a pretty interesting addition to blue for sure. I really like this one, and I think the more I think about it, the more cards I'm going to be able to think of that benefit off of this card. So the first super rare card we're looking at is Enemy of My Enemy. It's a 1-cost spell that reads play only if your champion and spirit are different elements. As an additional cost to play this card, discard a unit whose element is the same as your champion, and then you search your deck for a unit with the same element as your spirit and add it to your hand. Very cool card design here. I really like this. So anytime you're playing this card, you're going to discard a unit with the same color as your champ, and then you're going to be adding a unit with the same color as your spirit. So anytime you're splashing blue, so if you use blue as your spirit, you're going to be able to add something like Mayu to your hand for a cost of 1, which is pretty nuts. Anytime you're using blue as your primary color, you can use this card to search out any of the other splashes that you might play, something like Kite if you want to add a Garga to your hand, or if you're playing light and you want to add, Kara, the Lone Valkyrie, things like that. There's a lot of things this card can do, and I think this is one of the better cards in this set for sure. And then our second super rare card is Phantasmal Paladin. It's a 2-cost unit with 2,000 power, and it's an Omega unit. You place this on any of your water units, and then it says put a unit under this card into the discard zone and return target unit with Guardian to the top or bottom of its owner's deck. So one of our cheaper Omega units that we've seen so far, cost of 2, and a very easy requirement, just putting on top of any water unit is very nice. The effect is not super strong, but it's definitely not bad for 2 cost. Being able to get rid of any kind of Sola token or the Light Tower token is nice, or Phantasmal Guards. All of those Guardian options are very nice to get rid of. Obviously, it would be nice to get rid of Juggernaut, but it targets, so Juggernaut can just Shard Drain. But I do like this. It's an okay card. It's probably one of the weaker Omega units, but I think all of the Omega units have some kind of merit. As a 2-cost unit that has quickness and 2,000 power with additional options on it, like removing a Guardian, is never a bad thing. So the Argent rare for blue is Witch of the Future. It's a 3-cost unit with 2,500 power. It's an Omega unit that requires you to place it on top of 1 or more water units. And it says water spells cost you 1 less to play for each unit under this card. Whenever you withdraw a card, you may put a unit under this card into the discard zone instead. If you do, search your deck for a Witch unit or a Phantasmal card and add it to your hand. So very interesting card. This kind of gives a little bit of a boost to the Phantasmal archetype, which was mostly introduced in Revelations, the second set. It wasn't really played, so any kind of addition to that archetype is nice for it. I don't think you're going to be using that second effect a lot, though. You get most of your benefit from this card's first effect, which is making your water spells cost 1 less for each unit underneath it. So if you have 2 water units underneath this card, Ancient Serpent's Breath, Phantasmal Storms, they're all going to be costing nothing to play, which is pretty darn scary for blue, as they usually have very healthy hand sizes and ways to keep them healthy. Another thing to mention is the community's already been talking about this card with Crystal Dimensional Dragon and being able to play at least 5 water spells on your turn, so you make Crystal Dimensional Dragon free to cast that turn, which is pretty scary to think about. But I've looked into some of the blue cards that might help with that combo. There's some pretty good draw cards out there. Some of them are higher cost, but some are, in the 2 to 3 range. So that might be a possibility. I think that'd be something fun to do. Even if you don't go the Crystal Dimensional Dragon route, though, this card just being a generic, quickness card that allows Ancient Serpent's Breath and Phantasmal Storm to be free is enough on its own. So this card's definitely going to be played in blue, I think. And our last card is the secret rare for water, and it's Jillian Interdimensional Witch, which is a 6-cost unit with 5,000 power. It's an Omega unit, and you need to place on 2 of your units, and one of them needs to be a Witch unit. So once you do that, and she's on the field, she can exhaust herself and put a unit under this card into the discard zone and expel up to 2 target units your opponent controls. And if you do, the zones those units occupied cannot be used for the rest of the game. So, yeah, this is pretty darn scary. But you can respond to it in certain ways. You can remove the monsters that she's targeting by some kind of effect and get them off of the field. And if that happens, then her effect is not going to activate and block those zones. So it's nice to know that you have some kind of response window for this card, but if this card resolves, it's just like any of the other Secret Rare Omega units. If their effects resolve, it's probably game. But yeah, Jillian's obviously extremely strong. Just don't let it resolve, guys. Find ways around it. Treat your own monsters. Use the new Dark Spirit to sacrifice your own monsters, things like that. So, but yeah, that's it. That's all I got for water today. Let me know what you guys think. Like, comment, subscribe. Zeppelin out.